In April 2017, the U.S. Treasury did something extraordinary. It designated an entire family as a standalone criminal organization, Los Cuinis, not for moving drugs, but for engineering a financial shield so effective that it kept the most wanted drug lord on Earth invisible. A shadow network that laundered billions through shell companies in 5 countries, shifted assets hours ahead of every raid, and ensured every arrest, every seizure fell on them, never on El Mencho. The architect of this machine wasn't a cartel enforcer. He was an avocado broker from rural Michoacan. Abigael González Valencia was born in 1972 in Michoacan, a region where agriculture is more than an industry, it is a way of life. In the early 1990s, he was not yet a criminal mastermind. He was an avocado broker, working the same fields and export lanes that would soon become infamous. The avocado trade from Michoacan and Jalisco was already a juggernaut, sending billions of dollars worth of fruit north each year, with United States demand fueling a constant flow of trucks and containers through customs. Brokerage records from that decade show Abigail managing shipments, negotiating with buyers, and learning how to move money across borders without attracting attention. Every invoice, every customs document became a lesson in how to make large sums of cash look legitimate. But his education did not end in the orchards. For a brief period, Abigail served as a local police officer in Jalisco. This was no ordinary job for a future cartel financier. The experience gave him a close-up view of how law enforcement operated, how officers conducted inspections, what paperwork was required, and where the gaps were. He saw firsthand the rhythms of official raids and the limits of local oversight. It was a crash course in both the strengths and blind spots of the system. By the late 1990s, the produce economy in western Mexico was booming. Michoacan's avocado hubs shipped thousands of tons each season, and the region's exporters moved through tightly regulated channels. Abigail's brokerage work put him in the middle of this legitimate commerce, but also revealed how easily paperwork could be manipulated. Over-invoicing, phantom shipments, and creative accounting were not just theoretical. They were daily realities for anyone who knew the trade. The skills he picked up, understanding freight routes, managing export documentation, and navigating banking relationships would later become the building blocks of a far more complex operation. This early immersion in both trade and law enforcement shaped Abigail into something rare, a man who understood how to make money disappear in plain sight. Years before he would be called the architect of Los Cuinis, he was already laying the groundwork for a laundering empire, using the avocado business as his first blueprint. By the late 1990s, Abigael González Valencia was no longer just moving fruit. He was moving money for the Millennial Cartel. The skills he learned in the avocado trade became tools for something far more ambitious. His transition from broker to cartel financier began quietly, under the radar of both rivals and authorities. With the Millennial Cartel relying on agricultural fronts to mask drug shipments, Abigail started leveraging his understanding of invoices, customs, and cross-border payments to disguise the true source of cartel profits. He mastered the use of legitimate-looking documents to move large sums without raising suspicion, often using over-invoicing and phantom exports as cover for cocaine and methamphetamine proceeds. Operating under the alias Luis Angel Gomez Flores, he built a network of shell companies and nominee directors, many registered in tax havens like Belize and Panama. These entities appeared on paper as ordinary produce exporters, but their real business was cleaning millions in cartel cash. U.S. investigators would later uncover that these companies sent and received wire transfers routed through banks in Mexico, the United States, and Europe, always one step ahead of regulators. The U.S. Department of Justice confirmed Abigail's central role in a 2013 indictment. The document names him as the top financial operator for CJNG and the leader of Los Cuinis, responsible for collecting, transporting, and delivering drug proceeds from the United States to Mexico. The indictment's language is blunt. Abigael was not just a facilitator, he was the architect of a laundering machine that kept the organization liquid and its leaders insulated. By 2010, after the Milenio Cartel fractured, Abigael joined forces with his brother-in-law, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. Together, they founded Los Cuinis, not as foot soldiers, but as a financial shield for the new Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG. Abigail's tradecraft, honed in the avocado fields and polished in the shadows of the Milenio Cartel, now powered a criminal enterprise that would soon span continents. The blueprint was set, money would move faster than law enforcement, and the true owners would remain hidden behind layers of paperwork and aliases. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel operates with a clear division of labor that few outsiders ever see. On one side stands Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, commanding the armed wing that carves out territory, negotiates with rivals, and enforces control through violence. His reach extends over entire states, with CJNG soldiers moving cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl across the border into the United States. The cartel's reputation for brutality is well documented, but its true staying power comes from a quieter force operating in the shadows. That force is Los Cuinis. While CJNG soldiers fight for ground, Los Cuinis handles the aftermath, collecting the proceeds, moving cash, and making it all appear legitimate. United States indictments draw a sharp line. CJNG transports the drugs. Los Cuinis collects, transports, and launders the profits. The money does not just vanish. It is routed through a network of shell companies, layered with false invoices, and funneled into real estate, luxury goods, and offshore accounts. Each transaction is designed to keep the source of the funds hidden, and to keep the leadership insulated from law enforcement. El Mencho remains the public face, often named in media and wanted posters, but the financial machinery that keeps him untouchable runs through Los Cuinis. The family's network operates with near-clinical precision, using legitimate businesses as fronts and shifting assets across borders at the first sign of trouble. This dual structure, muscle on one side and money on the other, means that even when authorities close in, the money trail rarely leads back to the man at the top. To understand how El Mencho stays free, it is not enough to follow the guns. The real story lies in following the money. Inside Los Cuinis, silence is more than a habit. It is a rule enforced with precision. Mid-level managers, many of them relatives or trusted associates, operate under strict orders. Never put El Mencho's name in writing. In intercepted DEA wiretaps, conversations about money movements are cloaked in code. Phrases like "send the green avocado to the usual account" replaced any mention of cash or kingpins. Alias systems stretch across the network. Even wire transfers and business registrations use nominee names, often belonging to distant cousins, or paid fronts in Belize and Panama. Each layer insulates the real decision-makers from exposure. Compartmentalization is absolute. Couriers know only their immediate handler, never the full chain. Real estate purchases, cash pickups, and crypto transfers are split among separate teams, each reporting to a different mid-level enforcer. If one node is compromised, the rest of the network stays untouched. Internal audits flag any slip, and if a name appears where it should not, the responsible party is cut out instantly. This code of silence is not just about secrecy, but survival. It forces investigators to chase shadows, code words instead of names, nominee accounts instead of owners. Prosecutors are left piecing together indirect evidence, while the leadership remains protected behind layers of aliases and encrypted slang. The result is a financial shield, so dense that even when authorities seize assets or arrest family members, the true architects remain out of reach. Shell companies became the backbone of Los Cuinis' laundering machine. Belize and Panama offered the perfect cover. Both countries allowed companies to be registered with nominee directors, often listed as distant relatives or paid stand-ins. On paper, these firms looked like regular exporters of avocados, citrus, or tequila. In reality, they existed to move drug profits across borders without the scrutiny that followed cash. The mechanics were simple but effective. A shipment of avocados left Michoacan, with a legitimate invoice attached. But the paperwork often told a different story than the cargo. In some cases, the value was inflated by 30% or more, a classic over-invoicing scheme that allowed millions in extra funds to be wired to offshore accounts. Customs data from 2023 showed sanctioned firms declaring prices of $3.50 per kilo, well above the market rate. The difference became clean money, routed through shell companies in the Caribbean or Central America, then cycled back into real estate or luxury goods in Mexico, the US, and Europe. Trade-based money laundering did not stop at over-invoicing. Phantom shipments, where produce existed only on paper, let Los Cuinis generate customs records and bank transfers for goods that never left the warehouse. Freight forwarders like Logistica Cuauhtémoc and Maya Shipping appeared on invoice after invoice, often using the same container numbers for different months. These patterns signaled a system built for volume and speed, able to move funds faster than investigators could spot the anomalies. By the time authorities flagged one company, new shells were already in place, ready to keep the pipeline open. The sophistication of these tactics forced law enforcement to escalate, pushing the U.S. Treasury to use its most powerful tools against the network. On April 19, 2017, the U.S. Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control issued a rare and sweeping designation under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Act. The announcement named Los Cuinis as a transnational criminal organization, not just a collection of individuals. The official statement described the group as responsible for international cocaine trafficking and the laundering of massive narcotics, proceeds through a sophisticated web of front companies, real estate, and financial institutions spanning multiple countries. The move froze every known U.S.-linked asset tied to the family and immediately blacklisted 22 companies and individuals, including avocado exporters, real estate firms, and shell corporations in Belize and Panama. This was not a routine sanction. Only a handful of criminal families worldwide have ever received this level of designation. The Kingpin Act gave U.S. authorities the power to block all assets, ban American citizens and businesses from any dealings, and trigger secondary sanctions against those who tried to help the network. Treasury officials described Los Cuinis as a financial engine fueling one of the world's most violent cartels. Within hours, U.S. banks blocked transactions, and international partners received swift alerts flagging every listed entity. The battlefield had shifted. Guns and territory mattered less than the ability to move money. For the first time, the family's financial shield faced the full weight of American law. Within hours of the U.S. Treasury Kingpin Act designation, Los Cuinis operators were already on encrypted calls. DEA wiretaps captured hurried instructions. Every account flagged in the swift alert was to be emptied, with funds rerouted to digital wallets that didn't exist on any public ledger. The operation had a name inside the network: Project Phoenix. Mid-level managers using burner phones coordinated the transfer of millions in cartel cash into unlisted cryptocurrency wallets. The move wasn't a one-off. Each time a shell company or nominee director landed on a sanction list, Los Cuinis teams activated the same protocol. Laptops seized in later raids showed browser histories filled with tutorials on privacy coins and crypto mixing services. Asset freezes that once crippled other organizations now triggered a digital migration. Money flowed out of traditional banks and into the blockchain. leaving investigators tracing only transaction hashes and empty accounts. In one intercepted message, a Cuinis operative reported, "Funds are safe. Phoenix is complete." By the time authorities arrived at the listed businesses, the paper trail had already gone cold. This agility left law enforcement facing a new reality. The cartel's financial shield was no longer just offshore, but off the grid entirely. Rosalinda González Valencia stepped out of her home in Zapopan on a November night in 2021, and she was surrounded by agents from Mexico's Fiscalia General. The arrest unfolded quickly. No shots were fired, and there was no warning. Prosecutors filed court documents that same week, detailing her role as a key financial operator within the family's network. She wasn't just El Mencho's wife. She managed accounts, signed off on real estate deals, and authorized transfers that moved millions through shell companies. The filings described a pattern: assets in her name, properties across Jalisco, and offshore accounts linked to nominee directors in Panama and Belize. Authorities froze her bank accounts and seized 2 vehicles registered to her personal holding company. Yet with each move, the core leadership stayed untouched. Rosalinda's detention made headlines, but for Los Cuinis, it was another calculated loss. One node cut from a network designed to absorb the blow. Mexican prosecutors stressed that the real power lay not in any single arrest, but in the family's ability to replace operators and reroute money within days. Spanish police swept into a quiet Madrid gallery on March 5, 2025, armed with a court order and a list of names drawn straight from the U.S. Treasury Kingpin Act files. Officers cataloged more than €2 million in cash and seized 5 paintings, each registered to Gloriente Investments, a shell company already flagged by American investigators as a Los Cuinis front. The provenance records traced the art back to auctions in Paris and Miami, revealing a trail of high-value assets moved through Europe under layers of nominee ownership. That same spring, Panamanian regulators froze 2 offshore accounts on April 12th, acting on a request from the U.S. Department of Justice. The accounts, held under aliases linked to the González Valencia network, had received a series of wire transfers from flagged Mexican exporters and Spanish holding firms. Investigators mapped the flow of millions from avocado shipments in Jalisco to shell companies in Panama, bypassing traditional banking scrutiny. These operations, coordinated across 3 continents, signaled a new phase in the hunt. Law enforcement was now targeting the global arteries of Los Cuinis' financial shield, not just its local branches. Within 2 days of an asset freeze or company shutdown, Los Cuinis finance managers launch a familiar routine. Corporate registry logs from Belize and Panama show a clear pattern. As soon as authorities blacklist a shell company, a new one appears, sometimes with a nearly identical name, sometimes under a new nominee director. Legal paperwork is filed overnight. Bank accounts are opened, often in the same jurisdiction as the frozen ones, but under fresh credentials. Invoices and shipping documents are reissued to match the new shell's details. Freight forwarders and customs brokers, many on retainer, receive updated instructions by encrypted message. In one 2024 case, Puerto Vallarta, Grupo Segtac's real estate assets were seized in Mexico and the U.S. Within 72 hours, property titles were transferred to Grupo Beta, an entity created just weeks earlier. Internal workflow charts seized in later raids outline this process step by step, showing how mid-level managers coordinate the switch. For law enforcement, each enforcement action triggers a race against a system built for rapid recovery. The network's resilience is not an accident. It is the result of years spent perfecting the art of corporate rebirth, ensuring that even the most aggressive crackdowns rarely leave more than a temporary dent. Today, as law enforcement seizes assets and arrests family members, the financial maze Los Cuinis built continues to shield cartel power. Global crime is not just muscle. It is invisible, generational wealth, and strategic silence. Until governments outpace this kind of networked laundering, criminal empires adapt faster than justice. The real battle is not on the street, it is in the shadow economy. Share your thoughts below.